phone. Hello?
Hey, Mr. Cody, it's Wombo from work.
Oh. Hi.
What's up? How you doing?
What is this? I don't like this.
Wombo was just thinking, maybe Mr. Cody wants to come over Wombo's house for a bit. We can watch Green Book or play Stratego, or just soak in the hot tub or whatever. Wombo is wide open.
1 second. That's better. Boy, why do I feel like something very bad is going to happen to me? Some kind of looming threat of just bad. You guys feel that? Do you feel the bad? Like maybe 2024 is just going to be very, very tiring. Something about something happening later in the year. I can't put my finger on what. Some kind of event. Now Warmbo wants to hang out? What is that about? Okay, I know how to figure this out. With an episode of this show, Some More News. You heard of it? It's this show. Welcome to it. And hey, here's some more news. 2024 is gonna be just a whole lot. Exhausting news we can expect in 2024. Oh, heck yes. Are you ready to get tired? I sure am. I'm so ready to get tired that I'm already very tired. I need to lie down. My big bearded brain hurts. Because I don't know if you know this, but we haven't been shy about getting a lot of things right on this show. Which isn't to say we're always right. Part of our superpower is selectively finding the stuff we were right about and highlighting it while ignoring anything else. It's called being manipulative, and my therapist thinks it's awesome. My point is that hindsight is 20/20. Monday morning orgy ref, etc. and whatever. It's easy to talk about events we were right about after they happened. So why not call our shots instead? Friday night orgy ref. Really flex our psychic abilities. Oracle. It's not perfect. And honestly, much like a cursed orgy, I really hope that the following predictions for 2024 don't happen. Like, seriously, it would be really swell if we're wrong. Please. I'm literally begging. The pandemic is far from over. See what I mean? Also, it's possible that we're not using magic powers so much as looking at data. Anywho, the heck are we talking about here, huh? What's going on? COVID is over, right? It's certainly not a pandemic anymore, like we say in our title, and most Americans agree that COVID is over. And to be fair and balanced and a little salty to taste, COVID rates are largely way down. They seem to spike specifically during the winter, which scans, but those spikes aren't nearly as large as the Omicron wave back in old 2022. To be exact-ish, there were about 20,000 weekly hospitalizations in September of 2023. Of course, if you're immunocompromised, that's still too many people. But for most Americans, it don't matter to them. More like immunocompromised, they say. I'm so sorry I said that. It's the Americans are saying that. The other Americans, not me. Only 7% of Americans are, quote, very worried about getting COVID. And only 17% of eligible people actually got the latest vaccine. That last bit is a little concerning on account of the fact that older Americans really should be vaccinated regularly, but simply aren't. So it's safe to assume that there will be another spike this year. Perhaps during a time when people are all out going to something. Some kind of event that's close to winter where people gather really close to each other. An orgy? Am I thinking of an orgy again? I hope I'm not. Still, the possibility of COVID returning in some big, terrifying way is slim. So that's good. Segment over. No, it's not over. Not even like a da-da-da-da, like one of the, we haven't done those in a while. Hell yeah, welcome back. So if you look at the title of this segment again, you might notice that we didn't say COVID specifically. We tricked you good. You look like fucking asshole. We are pointing and laughing. Because I don't know if you know this, but COVID isn't the only virus that will exist. there will be other bigger and probably worse pandemics that we will have to deal with. And see, I'm not sure if you recall this, but something very ridiculous happened during COVID. A certain political party, when faced with an apolitical pandemic, decided to fight on the side of the virus. You remember that? When we learned that a huge portion of America apparently had oppositional defiant disorder to the point that they were willing to die instead of take basic and common sense measures to protect themselves and others from COVID. And even now are still putting out headlines absolutely terrified of having to put something over the lower half of their face. The ultimate sacrifice! Boy, that's really, really stupid. Like, when history looks back at that, it's going to be very embarrassing and baffling, especially since, after all of that, one of the uniting actions that state governments took from that ordeal, the more than 1 million deaths, was to pass a series of laws designed to stop health agencies from enacting mandates that would slow the next pandemic. No shit, that's a thing that happened. Currently, about 30 states have made it harder for health officials to issue basic protections like mask mandates and distancing. In other words, lawmakers saw a massive global pandemic that killed countless and said, you know what? The real problem is having to wear those pesky masks. And then, for the first time ever, they actually rushed through laws as if it were a life and death scenario, choosing to support death. It is beyond confusing to see politicians land on the side of the virus that killed everyone. But here we are, beyond confused. And so it would perhaps be nice to see someone rooting for the side that keeps people alive, especially now that we just saw the biggest wave since Omicron. Unfortunately, the White House has been silent on the issue. I wonder if there's a reason they would just let people die instead of making a politically unpopular health measure. Is there like some kind of political pageant happening soon? And while it's unlikely that we can issue mask mandates without a civil war, apparently, there are things that could be done right now to at least help. Some suggestions from this article by The New Republic include really obvious things, like renovating public spaces to have HEPA air filters, normalizing the use of masks in specific places, promoting regular vaccinations and making them easy to get, and pushing airlines to waive cancellation fees during COVID spikes. You'll notice none of that involves a mandate or forcing anything. Not that we're gonna do that, or anything. About anything. Because even if COVID numbers continue to go down and vanish, heck, even if we never get another pandemic again, which we will, but even if we didn't, COVID still isn't done with us.
Millions of Americans are suffering with long COVID, and it's unclear why. Doctors say it can happen to anyone, and it can be debilitating.
Back in 2022, the CDC reported that about 18 million American adults have or had long COVID. That's about 6.9% of adults. Not nice. Out of that group, people with symptoms were more likely to be unemployed than people without. And so it's safe to say that roughly 2 to 4 million Americans can't work due to long COVID. For reference, that's more than the entire state of Connecticut. And don't you act like you don't care about Connecticut, okay? That's where the WWE headquarters are. Certainly you want most of WWE to be able to work, right? Right? My point here is that long COVID is going to be a problem for a lot of people, possibly for the rest of their lives. So you'd think that a good country run by non-dildos would be able to easily take care of that. Except this country that is in fact run by yes dildos really likes to pretend things that are problems aren't problems, and even make policies based around the power of positive thinking. And so as of April 2023, Joe Biden signed a declaration that COVID was no longer a national health emergency. He also flat out said that, quote, the pandemic is over in September of 2022. But with that official declaration, a bunch of extra funds and benefits were halted, pushing tons of citizens out of Medicaid and effectively leaving America to twist in the wind. Because it's over, you see. Or to be more accurate, it's now easy to ignore. And we can go back to a system where absolutely no new protections are put in place for people struggling to survive. All safety measures are reversed, and we can all be slammed just as hard by the next pandemic. Be it COVID or something new and exciting. Maybe we'll get it from worms. We could call it worm germ, and I can finally offload all those custom hats I made while drunk. Oh, that's so exciting. Get your worm germ hats. Except Next time around, health officials won't be able to issue mask mandates in a bunch of states. Long live the worm germ, I guess. Glad we learned that lesson. Okay, well, I'm upset, and oftentimes I'll express that I'm upset and need a joyful story to cheer me up before we ironically cut to an even worse story. So maybe if I ask for a worse story, I'll get a good one. Okay, give me a worse story, please. Thank you. A bunch of anti-genocide voices will be censored. Well, I guess we learned something about expectations. So listen here. We keep saying that we're going to cover Palestine soon. It's like a mantra where every time we bring it up, we hint at this larger future episode. And it might seem like we're stalling because we're high and we slept in. But as we've said before, we like to take our time instead of trying to be the first to cover something. We also like to sleep in. But as we're filming this episode, our writers are working on that script next, which will be edited, then given to a fact checker before being printed out and fed to the magic news donkey that, after 24 hours, poops it out in the form of a moist pellet. That pellet is then force-fed to me. I go catatonic for exactly 76 minutes, and then when I wake up, I start talking and we film it. If you're in the industry, you know all of this. What I'm getting at is that I understand the frustration felt when a genocide is happening and people are disgustingly silent about it. And I understand that frustration and rage because I watch the news. Well, I eat the news in pellet form, but the fugue state is very emotional. And like you, I've noticed the pattern of mainstream media companies systematically downplaying the reality of a genocide happening right freaking now. As I mentioned with COVID, this country is very fond of pretending that everything is fine and there's no need to make waves. And so it's only natural to America, that we're gonna see a lot of people losing their jobs for making waves against this whole genocide dilly. I know this because it's already happened in the past and also recently, which is technically also in the past.
Well, there are also people that your government has killed. You accept that, right? You've killed children, or do you deny that?
No, I do not. I do not. First of all, you don't know how those people died, those children.
Oh, wow.
First of all, we don't want to see a single child killed.
Okay, here's my question for you, Mark. You say, I agree with you. I agree with you. We shouldn't blindly believe anything Hamas says. But why should we believe what your government says either? Your military spokesman on Monday pointed to an Arabic document in the basement of a Gaza hospital and claimed it was a Guardian list on which every terrorist writes his name. But that was false. It was just a calendar with the days of the week on it. Your colleague in the Prime Minister's office, Ophir Gendelman, posted behind-the-scenes footage from a Lebanese short film and claimed it was Palestinians in Gaza faking their own injuries. That tweet is still up a week later. That is endless disinformation from your government, is it not?
Oh, damn. He really blew that guy with facts. Sure hope no one pulls his show from the air. That's MSNBC's Mehdi Hasan interviewing Mark Regev, the senior advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu, about how his boss sure likes to kill kids and then lie about it. And while Hasan wasn't exactly the top dog at that network, you can see the value he has as a person who will actually call bullshit on the people he's interviewing. He's also one of the most prominent critics of the US and Israel's bombing of Gaza. Anyway, they pulled his show and demoted him, causing him to quit the network. But hey, maybe it's just a coincidence that he was yanked right after he began to question Biden's support of Israel. You know, it's like Magnolia. Life is random. Sometimes frogs fall from the sky and reporters get demoted for questioning a genocide. Anyway, Hasan's slot is being filled by Ayman Mohyeldin, a reporter who ironically made headlines back in 2014 for being pulled from Gaza on the eve of a major conflict for, quote, security concerns. Also known as Mohyeldin being critical of Israel after seeing them kill children with his own eyes. The network, NBC, would blame this on infighting and bureaucracy and try to downplay the connection. So random! But hey, seems like this keeps happening, right? In fact, following the October 7th attacks, MSNBC began plans to remove 3 prominent Muslim American journalists from their primetime positions. Just a lot of coincidences. Like in 2018 when Mark Lamont Hill gave a speech in support of Palestine and then coincidentally got fired from CNN right afterward. Or in 2021 when Emily Wilder tweeted about the double standards in media coverage of Gaza and then was coincidentally fired from the Associated Associated Press. You know, just two completely unrelated events where a reporter criticizes Israel the same week they just happen to be fired for no reason. That's just life. Frogs and Tom Cruise with that greasy hair and junk. All random. Just a random thing that keeps happening and will keep happening. Not just with Hassan and not just with major companies. Here's a local sports reporter for the Philly Voice getting fired for a tweet supporting Palestine. Here's a Palestinian journalist at Global News who got fired for, no joke, expressing grief on social media that people she knew were being killed. Here's an extremely level-headed tweet from Michael Eisen, longtime editor-in-chief of eLife, saying, quote, "Every sane person on earth is horrified and traumatized by what Hamas did and wants it to never happen again. All the more so as a Jew with Israeli family. But I am also horrified by the collective punishment already being meted out on Gazans and the worst that is about to come." Hey, that's super reasonable. It's worth mentioning that the use of Gazans isn't accurate considering that they are Palestinians who have been forced into Gaza, but it's still a good point. Anyway, he got fired for it, not for the Gazans stuff, but all the other stuff he said. Even the framing of that headline omits what he said and simply claims he was endorsing a satirical article without mentioning that he was making a very nuanced statement in response to a headline from The Onion. This is, to be frank, out of control, and it's just going to keep happening as the year progresses. Not to compare any two stories, but much like how we decided to attack wearing masks during the pandemic, it seems that our solution to the genocide that's happening is to blame anyone expressing outrage over the deaths and not, the people causing them. And of course, that's mainly going to be journalists who aren't exactly having a great decade, 2 decades, more? Are journalists masochists? Sorry, I should get that. Might be my dentist. I have a thing. It's a crush on my dentist. Holla for the C word!
Oh, hi, Mr. Cody. Wombo was just taking a bath and wanted to know if Mr. Cody wanted to, Wombo took an online class on making the C.R.T boards.
The what?
Does Mr. Cody like C.R.T boards?
Are you trying to say charcuterie boards? Wormbo, what is this? What you want to lay eggs in me so Katy will make me eat the eggs or something?
No, silly goat. Wombo just...
Is this a corn thing? You gonna slit my throat and pump me full of corn cream? Puppet my corn corpse? Just get to the bit so I can do the episode. Don't lure me in with cheese promises that I know you can't keep. Actually, listen, I'm just gonna go. Kill me or don't call me again. Sorry. It's being weird today. I might need to call Katy about it, actually. So let's break for ads and then continue our predictions into 2024 with Guile and Cody and Ken Masters and all the other Street Fighter and Final Fight characters. Sweet Sorbo Spirit. Hello, America. Are you disappointed? Or are you enjoying the show about what to expect in 2024? I'm kind of enjoying it. Pretty mid IMO. That stands for in my orifice. Anywho, I want to talk about Ground News, a really great tool that we asked specifically if they could sponsor us. Ground News breaks down who is covering a particular story and from what political lean. Because you know what else we can expect in 2024? News about Joe Biden's age. Oh boy. So for example, looking up the words Joe plus Biden plus age, you get that news about Hillary Clinton calling Biden's age a legitimate issue, and can see that right-leaning papers are more than happy to listen to her suddenly. Meanwhile, MSNBC completely softened the headline and focused on Clinton, quote, offering advice. See how learning about news can be fun and sad. Ground News gives me all this extra information like a bias distribution, a total number of articles covering a story, and even who owns the publication. So check them out at ground.news/SMN. You can subscribe for as little as $1 a month or get 40% off unlimited access through our link this month only. What they're doing is more important today than ever, and I encourage you to check them out. Ground.news/SMN. It's a website. Did I mention it's a website? I surely mentioned it's a website. At least at this point, I've mentioned that it's a website. It is a website. That's important to know. It's a website.
Hello, my news gems. It's me, Katy. Do you like beans? I do. I love beans. I've been known to eat a bean or two and also fill people's trunks with loose beans. You know, for friendship. And listen, if you need beans, but also fresh, high-quality groceries and recipes, and also beans, well, then you should check out Hungry Root. They deliver beans and other things right to your door. For my package, I got their Creole red beans, simmered cumin black beans, saucy tomato baked beans, and also, you know, beans. All you have to do is take a short quiz telling Hungry Root your preferences and even what appliances you have, and they will build you a personalized cart to fit your grocery needs. I told the quiz I needed beans, and guess what? They gave me beans. But there are other things that aren't beans that they offer. Things like gluten-free, vegan, keto, vegetarian, and even beans. Basically, if it tastes good, has trusted ingredients, and is easy to make, why then they have it. So save hours of planning and shopping with Hungry Root. And right now, Hungry Root is offering some more news listeners 40% off your first delivery and free veggies for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/more news to get 40% off your first delivery and get your free veggies. That's hungryroot.com/more news. Don't forget to use our link so they know we sent ya. Do not forget. Don't forget about the beans.
Yeah, I don't know, Katy. He just keeps calling me. He wants to watch Green Book. No, that's the Professor X Nazi one. No, that's the Tom Hanks Death Row one. No, that's Ryan Reynolds with superpowers. Look, I'm getting tired of this bit, okay? Just promise me you won't make it worse, okay? Okay, speech to text complete, and send text. Hello, my juicy snacks. We're back. Warmbo is planning to eat me, or at least consume me in some sort of metaphorical sense of the word. Count that as one of my many predictions I'm making for the rest of the year. And listen, listen. Look at me with your face, okay? You might be watching and thinking that any dull piece of toast could predict that COVID will spike again or that people will continue to be censored over their views of Palestine. So why don't we get ultra specific with it? Challenge me! Make me fight the future like in that X-Files movie where FEMA was the villain. Can you imagine a benign government agency tasked with protecting the safety of the public being spun into a conspiracy? What would that even be like? Aaron Rodgers is going to host a right-wing podcast. Oh, good answer. And specific, too. So you may know Aaron Rodgers as that dude who made regular appearances on the Pat McAfee show. I hear he also plays football. But he's mostly known for saying a bunch of embarrassing things, often conspiracy-brained, before going too far and having to make a retraction. Most recently, he did this.
Does that have something to do with the Epstein list that came out?
Feels like.
That's supposed to be coming out soon.
Look, this guy's been waiting in his wine cellar. Yeah. I've been waiting in my wine cellar for this thing.
A lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, are really hoping that doesn't.
Louise. All right.
Geez Louise. That is slander. So just to get it out of the way, Jimmy Kimmel isn't listed in any of the recently unsealed Epstein documents. Rodgers almost immediately had to walk this back, clarifying that Kimmel had made fun of him the previous year for claiming there was an Epstein list at all.
So I made this comment on the show whenever that was last year, right, I believe. And then unprompted, he comes out and says that I'm an overly concussed wacko. In my opinion, it seemed like because I believe that there was a list and that there were names on that.
So his claim there is that Jimmy Kimmel called him an overly concussed wacko because, quote, I believe that there's a list and there were names on that. And so him saying that Kimmel doesn't want a list to come out was actually because it would prove Kimmel wrong, not because he would be on that list. I wanted to show that clip and stress his convoluted quote there, because it's not true. Here's exactly what Kimmel said last year.
Needless to say, all this UFO talk has the tinfoil hatters going wild, including Green Bay whackpacker Aaron Rodgers, who offered this hot take on the Pat McAfee show.
I believe that this has been going on for a long time. interesting timing on everything. There's a lot of other things going on in the world. Did you hear about the Epstein client list about to be released too?
What's that? What are you talking about?
There's some files that have some names on it that might be getting released pretty soon.
Oh.
Might be time to revisit that concussion protocol, Aaron.
You see how this is getting silly? Last year, Aaron Rodgers claimed that the Chinese spy balloon story was a planned distraction from the Epstein client list, and Kimmel was clearly making fun of him for that specific theory and not that Rodgers thought there was a list at all. I can't believe I have to explain that. It's so childlike. I can't speak for Jimmy because he won't accept my fan fiction, but he wasn't denying the list in that clip. He was just making fun of the UFO stuff. That's just how words work. So Aaron is either really bad at being manipulative or just misunderstanding a very simple thing. And this fits into a larger pattern of Rodgers being a pretty simple conspiracy brain guy who just says stuff without really thinking about it before having to either double down or walk it back. Otherwise known as the perfect right-wing podcaster. Another extremely predictable example is that he refused to get vaccinated back in 2021, opting to tell reporters that he was, quote, immunized from COVID, meaning that he apparently claimed that he was immune to the disease, which wasn't true, it turned out, as evidenced by him getting COVID and being forced to miss a game. Aaron would then claim that he was allergic to the ingredients in the vaccine and opted to immunize himself by taking a, quote, diluted strand of the virus orally. And when the NFL hired a medical expert to investigate this claim, they found no evidence of that treatment working at all. Lord knows where he came up with that. Again, just kind of seems like a silly guy who will easily believe anything if it confirms his worldview. Because it slowly became clear that Aaron was just a weird anti-vaxxer who refused to do even the most basic protections because he didn't like being told to do stuff.
It was at that point that I petitioned them to accept my immunization status as under their vaccination protocol. Now, at the time, they had only had the big three was what they're going to do. And if you weren't in the vaccinated category, you were in a different category, which involved some draconian measures and protocols that you would have to adhere to, which in my opinion were not based on science.
If you're curious, the draconian and unscientific measures the NFL required unvaccinated players to take were to be tested daily and to continue social distancing and... Oh, that's it. Just those two draconian and unscientific things. This keeps going. I don't want it to, but it does. Because after failing to walk it back, Rodgers began to go full tilt about the issue, getting into a beef with Travis Kelce for doing a commercial for the vaccine. Remember, this started with Aaron Rodgers simply claiming that he specifically can't get the vaccine because his weak snowflake of a body was allergic to its ingredients. And now he's going after anyone who so much as suggests that vaccines are good.
You know, Mr. Pfizer said he didn't think he would be in a vax war with me.
Oh, boy.
Didn't think he'd be in a vax war with me. This ain't a war, homie. This is just conversation.
Ah, yes. All the best and smartest conversations start by calling someone Mr. Pfizer. Kelce ultimately turned down Rodgers' call for a debate, presumably because he had to win the Super Bowl and be with his family and have sex with the biggest pop star in the world and junk. But Rodgers never let it go. And finally, after years of being a weird little conspiracy freak perpetually picking fights above his weight class, that's a sports term, Pat McAfee couldn't take it anymore and booted Rodgers from being a weekly guest on the show, while still saying that he'd get to show up from time to time. Not exactly a punishment, and also he had him on like the next day, but whatever. This is all to say that Aaron Rodgers has a lot of bad opinions, a recent injury, and extra time on his hands. The Jets didn't make the playoffs. Podcast broadcasting equipment is affordable, and right now, the Daily Wire is hitting up those DMs, no doubt. We can all look forward to Aaron Podgers, or the Aaron Rodgcast, or simply the Aaron Rodgers Show, featuring regular guest RFK Jr. and a roundtable of the dullest honkies rattling out a cacophony of baseless pedophile accusations until they are predictably sued into oblivion. It'll be fun. Except counterpoint, no it won't. Hey look, a segue! Everybody will become a, quote, pedophile. Quotation marks are very important. Gonna have to explain this one a little bit. So you might have heard about this dude named Jeffrey Epstein. Well, he's no longer with us. Ha! But his pal Ghislaine Maxwell is. Ha-ha! And back in 2017, Ghislaine settled a defamation case against a woman who claimed to be sex trafficked by Epstein back when she was a teenager. And thanks to a Freedom of Information lawsuit by the Miami Herald, a bunch of documents from that case have been released. This is what Aaron Rodgers has been gloating about as his Epstein list, which, by the way, isn't really a list. It's more like a 4,553-page pile that includes, somewhere in there, 150 people mentioned during that defamation trial. And so two things can be true. Number one, these new documents didn't contain any new smoking gun against a public figure. And number two, Bill Clinton and Donald Trump are rapists. Also Prince Andrew, who the new and old evidence very much implicates. Also, a bunch of other rich people, most likely. It's safe to say that. For me, at least, because I know karate. As for the two schlubby former presidents, all that's been said is that they were likely at least aware of what Epstein was doing, because he was apparently very open about it, to the point that his home was filled with nude pictures of young girls. I don't think you have to be a pedophile expert to walk into someone's home and see big signs that read pedophile beer on their walls, and also be a bit concerned about that, unless you were also a pedophile. Point being that Clinton, Trump, and let's not forget Alan Dershowitz were all mentioned a lot as close friends or associates of Epstein. So it's hard to imagine a situation where they weren't aware. Like, hypothetically, if I smoked a lot of weed and kept it around my house everywhere, and Katy came to my house a lot and hung out, you might wonder if Katy was also smoking weed, hypothetically. She could at least, be cool with weed, hypothetically. Also, in this scenario, Katy constantly talked about how she wanted to smoke weed, often walked in on other people smoking weed, and was seen leering at weed at a party while standing next to me.
Both men are seen enjoying themselves, Trump pointing out women dancing in front of them.
Donald Trump is a rapist, like a really obvious rapist. He apparently once had a party where the guest list was just himself, Epstein, and 28 young girls. Also, I do smoke weed. I admit it. Anyway, I bring up Trump specifically, and not Clinton, who's also a rapist, because of how the right reacted to the towering evidence against Trump. In short, sad denial. You see, because these recent documents have two witnesses claiming that they never saw Trump on Epstein's islands, a series of very good brains have decided that this clears him of all accusations, which you may have noticed requires ignoring all the other evidence. And what I want to highlight there are the words of Mr. Turd, specifically him claiming that, quote, pretty much everybody else is guilty. I think that's the really telling detail here, which brings us all the way back to those quotation marks, because the Epstein documents are, as I mentioned, really long. No one is going to go through all of that. We just wanted a list, give us a list, something snazzy and searchable, perhaps read by David Letterman. But since we didn't get that, these new Epstein documents can be used to claim really anything. The right specifically loves inserting this story into larger conspiracies designed to cover up uncomfortable realities. Trump gets raided by the FBI? Well, the judge who did it was tied to Epstein, of course. Never mind that the judge was actually a lawyer for Epstein's employees and just happened to be the judge on duty to sign the search warrant. These people seem to have a childlike understanding of how the world works, and they will continue to use these documents to say just about whatever they want and deflect in any way they can.
It's not like he got lenient sentences for and then mysteriously died in his prison cell, and all of the footage went missing, and no one knows how he suddenly was able to end his own life. Yeah, stop thinking about it. Just get on with it. The New York Times can be relied on to tell you the truth. There's nothing to see here. Trust the legacy media. We haven't got no skin in the game.
Yes, do not trust the media. Nothing they say. Ignore the headlines, please. Pretty please ignore the headlines. What I'm getting at here is that there's absolutely something fishy with the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Probably because very powerful people are absolutely guilty of that horrific shit. But he was also a really rich guy who knew a lot of people. And so it stands to reason that not everyone he knew was part of a grand pedophile conspiracy. That's most likely the case, except a portion of the country lost their minds over Pizzagate a few years back and are actually willing to accept that there is this massive thousands upon thousands of people conspiracy of pedophiles that just happens to include all the people they specifically don't like and discludes Trump, the person who happens to be one of the most implicated. It's just a wild card for them. They can point to anyone famous and say, I bet you're a pedophile, with no actual evidence. And I'm willing to bet that before the year ends, it's going to happen on the political stage. Perhaps being said by the guy who was almost definitely a rapist. And besides it being a totally grotesque monkey of a display, the bigger tragedy is that it will greatly distract us from figuring out who was actually involved in this. If everyone calls everyone else a pedophile, then ironically, the people actually implicated will get lost in the shuffle. The word loses all meaning, which the real sex criminals are probably very happy about. It's the I'm Spartacus of pedophiles. Good job, everyone. Nobody answer that! Thank Christ. I think...
Oh, Mr. Cody, are you there? I can taste you breathing.
Hey there, Tex. You like hair? I honestly, I can't hear your response, but listen. There's nothing wrong with having no hair. Rocks, they don't have any hair. They've been around for a while. Dragons, also, they tend to not have hair either. But if you are worried about hair thinning, you can certainly check out Nutrafol. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand with over 1 million people seeing thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding. Their supplement uses 100% drug-free ingredients. Because let's face it, there are better places to get drugs, am I right? Take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month's subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code MORENEWS. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and hairstylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelled NUTRAFOL.com/men, and then enter promo code MORENEWS. That's Nutrafol.com/men, promo code MORENEWS. It also works for people who aren't men, like dragons.
Oh, hi! As my Nana used to say, the world is a vampire. It really sucks you off. Sucks your health, that is. Taking care of your health isn't always easy, but it should at least be simple. That's why for the last many very good years, I've been drinking AG1. It's just 1 scoop, mixed in water, once a day, every day, and it makes me feel energized, like I'm the one sucking off the world, not the other way around. That's because, according to AG1, each serving of AG1 delivers my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more. It's a powerful, healthy habit that's also powerfully simple. Watch as I suck this drink. That was a quick one. Yummers. Yummers. It's cool and cold, like old Job. And according to AG1, if there's one product I had to recommend to elevate your health, it's AG1, and that's why I've partnered with them for so long, according to AG1. So, if you want to take ownership of your health, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/more news. That's drinkag1.com/more news. Check it out. Nana demands it. Do you think he's gone? That was close. Here I was, having a great time talking about pedophile accusations, and Warmbo had to visit and talk and exist. It's disgusting. We were going through our predictions for exhausting things that will happen in 2024, including the fact that the word pedophile will lose all meaning. And speaking of calling people pedophiles, Twitter is going to hit rock bottom. Okay, well, it doesn't take a doctor to declare a charred torso as being officially dead. Currently, the site is in the middle of bleeding out. Global traffic is down 14%, and the company purchased for $44 billion is now being valued at $15 billion, which I do believe is less money. Basically, everything Elon Musk said would improve actually got worse. He was wrong about everything. He claimed that Twitter would break even in 2023, reach 600 million active users by 2025, and have 159 million Twitter Blue subscribers by 2028. And I don't know, there's still time. I mean, there's what? A little over 400,000 Blue subscribers as of May 2023. We don't have the current numbers because, and this is real, Musk banned the guy keeping track of that. But anyway, he's just got another, rounding up, 159 million to go. Also, active users are going down, not up. And boy, they are very much still in debt. Meanwhile, ad sales plummeted by 59% from April 2022 to April 2023. But Elon can probably turn that around.
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
Oh, right. For a second, I forgot that he's an extremely uncool person who seems to have a humiliation fetish and is subconsciously trying to lose as much money as humanly possible. We've all seen the clip. So let's watch it again.
Go f*** yourself.
Boy, in terms of awkwardness, I'd have to rate that as 10 out of 10 slightly smaller bomber jackets. So look. We've covered Twitter and Elon Musk a few many times on this show, and I'm not going to repeat what's been said. Nor am I going to talk about how, since our last videos, Musk has fully devolved into a weird little Nazi freak posting a series of increasingly unhinged opinions like a magician pulling scarves made of human flesh. The guy who wanted to be the savior of mankind has amazingly transitioned into a mediocre Blaze TV host in an impressively short amount of time. Now claiming that migrants will take our homes, or that cis is a slur, or becoming obsessed with DEI, a thing we will be getting to very soon. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about all of that, mainly because I'll be doing another episode about it. What I actually want to talk about is the incredible whiplash happening due to Elon Musk's completely unhinged and hate-fueled statements coming from and about Twitter, and the company's absolutely hilarious attempt to pretend everything is okay. To quote Twitter's current CEO and perpetual nervous breakdown haver, Linda Yaccarino, X is enabling an information independence that's uncomfortable for some people. We're a platform that allows people to make their own decisions, and here's my perspective when it comes to advertising. X is standing at a unique and amazing intersection of free speech and Main Street, and the X community is powerful and is here to welcome you. Oh, right, it's called X. So that is, incredibly, how she responded to her boss literally telling advertisers to go f*** themselves and not buy ads on Twitter, a site that pays her, I assume, an obscene salary. Because while Elon seems to want everyone to think that Twitter is now a free speech haven unbeholden to anyone, it's clear that the site is desperate to make money. And that's interesting, because when you think about it, if the richest man in the world truly believed that he was bettering mankind by creating a marketplace of ideas with no masters and, quote, open source news, then he wouldn't care about it making money, right? Like, he would assume it wouldn't make money and would be so altruistic as to pay for it himself. Because you can't do both, right? You either make an anarchist Candyland paid entirely by unconventional means, or you deal with advertising ghouls. Patreon.com/somemorenews. But Musk isn't fronting the cash. He's not running the fucking Pirate Bay, even though he acts like it. It's almost like he accidentally bought Twitter because he was dared into doing it and now has no fucking clue what to do, but is so pot committed to his free speech hogwash that he can't admit he made a mistake. Every single policy change he's made has been bad. He single-handedly turned Twitter blue into a mark of shame, pushed celebrities off the platform, got rid of all moderation, associated the brand with hate speech, and boosted the absolute worst people on the internet. He did the exact opposite of everything you should do to run a successful social media site. And before you call out community notes as a good thing, that was originally called Birdwatch and was created before he took over. In short, he turned a flawed site into a crumbling hellhole. Just both cities in the BioShock games mushed together. And so going back to how easy it is to look at all of this and say that Twitter is dying, I want to augment my prediction a little bit by explaining exactly how it'll die. So, did you know that Twitter fired all of their election misinformation moderators? Of course you knew that, or rather assumed it. So I think perhaps Twitter is going to get really, really bad this November. For some reason that I forget. Some kind of race is happening? A pod race? A pod race. And I think that as more pod racers notice that Twitter is failing and dig into moderation laws around Twitter, we're going to start seeing some nasty lawsuits. Maybe even some crimes get exposed. And no matter what Elon Musk will say, quietly, they'll be trying to play ball. And what we're going to see, starting in 2024, is Musk very slowly trying to put Twitter all the way back to where it started before he bought it, while hoping nobody notices. And most likely, the site will just end up dying before he gets there. He's already started, too. Did you hear that they're hiring more moderators thanks to that Taylor Swift AI porn thing? It's almost like moderators are good and necessary. Though this move is likely more because Elon very clearly wants to f*** Taylor Swift. Sorry, buddy, it's not going to happen. Aw, shucks. But more importantly, it's almost like everything Elon dismantled was there for a reason. And now we're going to have to watch Elon learn that in real time as high-profile people get affected. Literally, it's just this tweet. Read it. Read the tweet. Are you reading it? Okay. It'll be like 2015 all over again, starting with Twitter deciding to pivot to video, which they are currently trying to do, even going so far as to artificially boost the view count of a Mr. Beast video to make it seem more successful, which you might recall is exactly what happened when Facebook did this. He's just doing the exact same thing, but nearly 10 years later. Amazing. It's like his browser is accidentally stuck 10 years in the past, which would actually explain his humor. So, that tweet is from 2023. 2023. Here it is again. And again, in 2023, notice it doesn't even make sense in the context of what he's replying to. It's just like a thing he thinks he can say whenever he wants to project the illusion of a joke. So, yeah. At the end of this year, Twitter's misinformation problem is gonna grow. It's gonna get the attention of lawmakers, possibly in a bad way, possibly f*** up the country, and desperately try to correct course by bringing back all of the old moderation systems and policies, only it'll rebrand it all to seem different and Musk will take credit. But by then, people will just keep moving on. It'll bleed out, possibly for years, while Musk tries to convince people not to use phone numbers, before fading into oblivion and everyone will move on to the next thing. Just like we're about to move on to the next thing, which is this thing. DEI is the new C.R.T. Hey, speaking of fads, diversity is a fad. Just kidding. Can you imagine? No, that's not the fad. Remember C.R.T.? It stood for something very specific that was being taught to a select group of college kids, but Republicans pretended it stood for something really broad, and then claimed that the very broad thing was being taught to elementary school kids and destroying the country, and then made a bunch of really bad laws before claiming they defeated C.R.T., which they didn't, because it was never that broad thing they claimed it to be, and then they just stopped talking about it because it was never real to begin with. And we all sort of knew it, right? And accepted that our education system was just a little worse now because a small number of conservatives manufactured an outrage over nothing for the purpose to inject a pinch of white nationalism into our education system. Notice how I didn't get into the details or exhaustively explain what C.R.T. is and isn't, because it's not like it fucking matters to them. Also, just go watch our video about it. Do we have a clip? Very informative. The whole thing is part of a very long and pretty sus history of conservatives being mad at school curriculum whenever it teaches something other than a whitewashed version of history. And there's always been a passing outrage around the concept of diversity, often manifested in some kind of acronym. PC culture, C.R.T, and now DEI, aka Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. The looming threat that colleges and institutions are overrun by politically correct liberals has been a thing since at least the 90s. So have Republicans been going after affirmative action for decades, and it's never actually been a problem, right? You would assume that if PC culture was out of control 30 years ago, we'd see some kind of evidence of that today. Am I missing something? Are white people struggling now? Or rather, struggling worse than other races? We're all doing not great. Generally speaking, being inclusive and compassionate and seeking equity doesn't really cause a lasting harm the way, say, pollution or poverty or a new terrible Indiana Jones does. Like, maybe it's caused some problems somewhere, but not enough to make it this huge battle. This is all to point out how strange it is that conservatives are able to get away with making a large portion of their agenda devoted to fighting against an invisible threat that never actually happens. For decades. And perhaps we should stop entertaining them at all when they bring this stuff up. We certainly shouldn't make political policies around it. So let's stop. Can we stop?
Okay, here's the problem with DEI, for real, if you want to know.
2 weeks ago, Elon Musk posted on X that, quote, DEI must die. Turns out he might have been onto something.
DEI frameworks have largely failed Jewish students.
Outrage over diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, it never ends. And now it's reached Johns Hopkins Hospital, one of the world's finest.
Claudine Gay was the symbol of the DEI regime that has conquered American academic life.
The Biden administration wants to spend $280 million on DEI initiatives.
It seems like, obviously, this is a dangerous business when you are focused on DEI and maybe less focused on engineering and safety, which you should be when you build airplanes which people can die in.
The values of Israel and America very much align. And once we start seeing those values disintegrate, and that's coming in through DEI, through anti-racism, through SEL.
Is that DEI, this poisonous alphabet soup, DEI, C.R.T, BDS, that's being crammed down these young skulls is being exposed for the hollow, for the false god that it actually is?
No. That's a no? They're just gonna throw everything at the wall and hope it sticks. Awesome. DEI is why planes crash and how Hamas wins, apparently. And so while we're not going to get into the CRT panic, we should probably look into what DEI actually is, starting with the headlines that major companies are downsizing their DEI programs. Those stories often highlight tech companies cutting a portion of their DEI staff, as well as the fact that DEI-related job postings have dropped. I'd argue neither of those two things have to do with DEI programs being bad for business, as conservatives are framing it.
You know, we got to make profits, and DEI isn't working. Great idea on paper, maybe in theory, not good for business.
See, the narrative going on is that DEI created a bunch of diverse hires that made the businesses worse, and now they are walking back their policies. You might notice that as being a very racist narrative that happens to be mirrored by the fucking richest man in the world. They want us to think that airlines and other companies brought on unqualified employees because they were diverse and then failed because of that and are now walking that policy back. This also, very insidiously, gives them a false justification for decades upon decades of systemic racism, a way to justify a legacy of institutions being cartoonishly white. Because, you see, it's not a history of discrimination if you pretend that brown people are simply less competent all along. Such a plot twist. We weren't racist after all. It's the minority's fault, you see. Super unracist position to have, I say with sarcasm. And of course, the hope here is to use this narrative to shame institutions out of making actual efforts to mitigate a system built on white supremacy. It's a conservative wet dream, a narrative where not only is diversity bad, but discrimination never happened and we don't have to change at all. But this narrative has a key problem, besides being racist. Specifically, that none of these institutions actually made diversity efforts to begin with. See, DEI does suck, but not for the reasons they say. It sucks because they didn't do it. Airlines, for example, did not increase their diversity after their DEI measures. Pilots and engineers are still 92% white and male. So, wait, if diversity isn't why airlines are bad, I wonder what it actually is. Perhaps some other reason involving the airlines giving their CEOs obscene raises while cutting all other costs. Anyway, the same goes for tech companies. Google has barely moved the needle with diversity hires. All of these corporations made this big performative push in 2020, did nothing to actually improve diversity, and are now scaling back those programs. That's likely why job postings have dropped, because there was a bump when they hired everyone, and that bump went down. Because they already hired people. You don't need to keep hiring people for the same ultra-specific positions every year, right? And in fact, besides these major companies, DEI efforts are actually still expanding, which would be good if they actually did anything. In fact, a lot of places are rebranding DEI completely thanks to this new conservative attack, which means that what seems like shrinking is actually just pivoting. As for education and college campuses, it's kind of the same story there. Despite it being treated like a looming threat to teachers, most DEI school offices have very little funding or power. To quote a professor from Pennsylvania State University, they struggle for resources and don't have much power of enforcement at all. Nobody's hired or fired in a university because of what a DEI office says. It doesn't work that way. It's mostly an advisory or aspirational office. It's harmless. So harmless that it's actually useless? In fact, the most use DEI seems to have is to give conservatives something to pretend to fight against. It's a performative measure being performatively battled like a Ren Fair puppet show. Last year, our new favorite loser, Ron DeSantis, signed a bill banning DEI in public colleges. Texas did as well. Utah passed a law to restrict this make-believe threat, as is the governor of Oklahoma trying to do the same. In all these cases, they are just beating down an already beaten thing. These departments are barely hanging on already, like taking a shotgun to those aforementioned Ren Fair puppets. And what sucks about all of this is that the concept of DEI isn't bad. Even huge dumb piece of shit Elon Musk agrees. Schools and corporations should have departments making real efforts to increase diversity, if only because diversity objectively improves things. Like, according to research, it makes people and companies more successful. And much like we saw with C.R.T., this crusade against DEI is just going to punish any action that has a hint of diversity to it. To continue the metaphor, the shotgun blast will not only disintegrate the Ren Fair puppet, but spray the entire audience with buckshot. Awesome puppet show, though. Oh my god, it was so fun and up. What a weird show. Back in June 2023, Texas A&M University announced the hiring of a black professor to breathe new life into their journalism school. This extremely experienced professor, who had spent 20 years working for the New York Times, also happened to have a background studying inclusion and race in relation to newsrooms. And that background was enough for some people to put up so much of a stink that A&M ended up downgrading her contract so much that she didn't take the job. It was such a screw up that the school ended up paying her $1 million settlement, and the president of the school resigned. Now you tell me, how does any of that address the conservative fears of DEI? If they aren't just racists, which they are, but pretending they aren't, then isn't the entire fear that unqualified people get jobs because they're a minority? Wouldn't they want to prove they aren't racist by celebrating an extremely qualified black person getting a job? But again, they're just racist, right? Like, objectively speaking, if DEI is not actually effective and companies aren't actually that diverse, then why go after it? You can only look racist doing this. You're just like, well, a plane crashed. Surely it was a black pilot. What a weird thing they've agreed to do. It's just, they just want to court racist is the thing. Oh, there's also one other reason. there will be increasing attacks on educators. Right. I mean, as far as predictions go, this is like saying that the ocean will continue to be wet in 2024. At least I hope it is. Is that... I haven't checked on the ocean in a while. We're not doing climate change this episode. All right, we'll address that later. What I mean is that conservatives have been going after schools and the education system for a while, and so it's safe to say they will continue to do that. Mainly with all this DEI business. But also, they recently found a brand new tactic: accusations of plagiarism. Now, plagiarism sucks. Don't do it. I hate it. I actually have an upcoming 4-hour video about it, so check that out when it publishes. And I would argue most people feel the same way as I do. It's an easy thing to create outrage over. Even when the accusations are minor, sometimes it's just too late when the dust settles. And so theoretically, it's a good weapon to wield against someone you already don't like. So let's say there was some kind of school official who both represented diversity and also had committed the terrible crime of not condemning Hamas with every breath they take. Let's call them Dr. Claudine Gay, Harvard's first black president who recently stepped down because of plagiarism accusations concerning several academic papers she wrote going back to the 90s. It's totally made up person. So we have this black woman, supportive of diversity, in charge of a college where many students publicly criticized Israel, and whose name is literally Gay. I'm sure conservatives were mostly mad about the plagiarism and nothing else. Probably a coincidence that this woman was already in their crosshairs, having to even undergo a congressional hearing about Israel and accusations of anti-Semitism from protesters on campus. Then, these plagiarism accusations spring up. Several days after the hearing, by Chris Rufo, a conservative dip who has very publicly taken credit for inventing the C.R.T. panic as a political tactic. Chris's entire MO is finding the next artificial moral panic that Republicans can wield to keep their base attentive, and is very much focused on using schools as an ideological battleground.
Claudine Gay was the symbol of the DEI regime that has conquered American academic life.
He's also one of the people who drummed up outrage for Drag Queen Story Hour. A thing you may notice that conservatives just stopped talking about. So it's amazing people give credence to anything he says anymore. And yet, Dr. Gay would end up having to resign from her position because of these plagiarism accusations, which, did I mention they weren't that severe? And don't get me wrong here, there was plagiarism. I'm not letting her off the hook completely. But to quote the independent investigation into this, in 9 instances, her articles, quote, paraphrased or reproduced the language of others without quotation marks and without sufficient and clear crediting of sources. That's not great. It's bad, actually. But according to the authors she lifted from, nothing Gay had done equated to the, quote, theft of ideas. In fact, the only author who was upset about this was a one Carol M. Swain, who happens to be a frequent guest on conservative media and has spoken out against C.R.T. And by spoken out, I mean she wrote an entire book about how C.R.T. is bad.
And some of the worst ideas in human history have come from professional educators, and we cannot trust them with our children because they have agendas that's very much rooted in cultural Marxism. It's about tearing down traditional structures, the family, marriage, church, on and on.
Oh yeah, seems like a great judge of educational matters. That must be why she's a professor at the not a university, Prager University. I don't want people to think that I'm absolving Dr. Gay of the mistakes she made, or even implying that they were innocent mistakes. It's more that this specific accusation of plagiarism is just so transparently not about the ethics of plagiarism, and is more about conservatives finding a way to go after an educator. For example, you may have seen hedge fund billionaire Bill Ackman go after Dr. Gay when they were still calling for her removal. And then perhaps you saw the immediate revelation that Ackman's wife had also done a plagiarism while at MIT. But way, way worse than what Dr. Gay did. Apparently, she copied and pasted shit from Wikipedia, to which Bill Ackman extensively tried to argue was totally okay because MIT didn't specifically say you can't copy from Wikipedia. In other words, he didn't actually care. Like, obviously he didn't care, because it was never about plagiarism. It was a hit by the right for political reasons, orbiting this weird racist resentment around DEI policies. And because it worked this time, we're going to continue seeing attempts to oust school figures for petty things, all at the cost of schools, of course. And on the other side of things, we're also going to see more and more ghouls infiltrate our schools for the singular purpose of pushing a political ideology on children. The exact thing they keep accusing the left of doing. I don't know how many times we should or need to beat this drum, but I would reckon that the reason conservatives see schools and education as a threat has nothing to do with ideology being pushed. They seem to be threatened by very basic curriculum teaching things like history or empathy, and maybe they should reflect on that. You know how Republicans are really good at reflecting on stuff and learning from mistakes? About as good as Democrats, I guess. Bad. They're both bad at it, is what I'm saying. Hey! That reminds me. There's an election, apparently. Right! I knew there was something happening at the end of the year. Okay, so it's cheating to predict that there will be an election in 2024. I can just, look around and see that that's true. You know, and it is. It's true. It's happening. It's not hard to assume that it'll be Trump versus Biden because it's already that. I mean, I guess Nikki Haley's still around, but, you know. Come on. I mean, really? Come on. Come on. I'm not really gonna make any prediction in this segment, so much as give us all a chance to reflect on how profoundly clown shit this election is going to be. It is hard to even fathom. It's like trying to imagine the size of the sun. For starters, one of the candidates is facing 91 felony counts the same time he's running for office. Those charges include, but aren't limited to, falsifying business records to pay off women he had sex with, racketeering, a very clear case of him refusing to hand over documents, and of course, trying to steal the 2020 election. Meanwhile, Trump has made it clear that he will not keep his mouth shut, as if he's trying to see how many lawyers he can kill with stress-induced heart failure. It's honestly hard to imagine him winning most of these cases, as so many people have flipped on him. Ultimately, a lot of this will come down to the Supreme Court, which will have a lot of trouble justifying it if they side with the guy who coincidentally hired a bunch of them. I mean, I'm sure they'll find a way, though. If Trump is lucky, he'll be able to push the date back for a lot of these cases until after the election, because if he becomes the president, none of this will matter for many, many, many grim reasons. It's probably a great motivator for him to do a good job running for president, because if he loses, then he'll probably just go to jail, right? In a lot of ways, this next election is the ultimate stress test, not only on the cardiovascular system for Trump's staff and the integrity of our elections in the Supreme Court, but the Republican Party's ability to protect itself from reality. For the next year, they are going to have to pretend like Trump is innocent of these obvious crimes, and I'm guessing that a lot of them are hoping that, in the event that Trump loses, they will finally try to pivot away from him. Because it's not like Biden is hard to defeat. But until then, this election will be a game of distractions and misinformation. And I guess my prediction is that everything we talked about in this video will come up during the campaigns. And in fact, Trump's likelihood of being elected will hinge on it. His mishandling of the pandemic will surely come up during debates. He'll have to be like, I'm the one who made the vaccine, which is poison, by the way. Also brought up will be Biden's terrible policies on Palestine, met equally with Trump's terrible plan for handling Palestine. Trump and other right-wing candidates will most definitely label their opponents as pedophiles, and Lord knows Twitter will be a rat festival of misinformation. Can't wait to see Elon discuss DEI with Trump on Twitter Spaces. Oof. DEI will no doubt be the central issue of multiple GOP campaigns, as will great replacement stuff, of course, just gonna throw that in there, as will accusations of plagiarism and attacks on education. This is all on the table, the terrible, wobbling table made of turds and bones that seconds from collapse. I guess what I'm saying is that this is going to be one of the dumbest elections ever, and simultaneously one of the most important for America. like always, a turning point resting on Genocide Joe and Crime Dictator, where two of the oldest people who ever lived stumble around questions about fucking diversity in airlines, and everyone gets to tune in on X, where the top boosted tweet will be misinformation about a mass shooter or violence at a protest, while Ian Miles Chong live X's about how Biden is paying migrants to hack voting machines. So very embarrassing. That's my final psychic prediction. 2024 will be embarrassing. But I'll be here with you. I'm not going anywhere. My life is great. I even got rid of Warmbo. In fact, if I were to predict it, I think 2024 is going to be a totally uneventful year for me personally, and without any twists and turns. I'm calling it now. It's going to be a great year for Cody and my pals. End of episode. We nailed it.
Come on. Somebody. Wombo should run away. Wombo will run away. Wombo will make everyone pay for not wanting to hang out with Wombo! This is what you get for not wanting to hang out with me! Me leaving! I won't think about that longer. The logic is sound! The logic is sound!
Hey everybody, did you enjoy the foreshadowing? It's there for a reason. Stay tuned. Okay, so thanks for watching the video. Like it if you can, subscribe to the channel, it would really help us out. We've got a patreon.com/somemorenews. That would also help us out. We've got a podcast called Even More News. You can listen to this as a podcast called Some More News. Look up podcasts and find it. We've got a merch store, shop.somemorenews.com. We got some new designs and we'll have more on the way. Check those out. We've got not much more to say. So click on your screen. There are videos of ours that you can watch now. Maybe they're pertaining to the topics of the episode we just did and you can learn more. At the end.